Welcome to week number 1 of the Collegiate Hearthstone National Championship, where over the next 7 weeks, more than 800 teams from the United States and Canada will battle it out for their share of $160,000 in scholarship prize money. My name is Cora Georgiou, and I'm joined on the desk today by none other than Brian Kibler. Brian, are you excited for this tournament?
Yeah, it's a really cool event. A chance for players to not only win some prize money, make a name for themselves, but also represent their school on this national stage.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be teams of 3, and schools can have any number of teams they want. So actually, our first match today is going to be a mirror match, but we'll get into that soon enough. Let's go ahead and take a look at the format for this tournament. The regular season will be Swiss. Teams are split into one of 4 regional Swiss groups, North, East, South, and West, and they will be playing 1 match a week over 7 weeks. Teams with 5 or more wins will advance to a Swiss playoff, which will be the regional playoff. And then after that comes the championship brackets. The top 16 teams from the playoffs will advance to the championship bracket, which will eventually lead all the way up to the top 2 teams from each region advancing to the live national championship with an undisclosed location so far, but I'm sure wherever it is, it will be fantastic. The championship for the last series actually just finished up at PAX South in San Antonio just a couple days ago, so really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and the actual format we'll be playing those matches in will be Conquest. Each of the teams submits 4 unique deck lists for 4 different classes, and unlike normal Conquest that we tend to see, each team is going to have a self-ban, so rather than choosing one of the opponent's decks they won't be able to use, you choose one of your own decks that you will not play in the match. You then play a best of 5 match. You have to win with each deck once. Once you win with a deck, you can't play it again, but you can keep playing a deck if you're having some trouble with it.
Yeah, mixing sort of the old Conquest format that we know and are certainly used to by now, and a bit of a new mechanic with the self-ban. So let's go ahead and take a look at our schedule for today. We are going to be tackling the South and West regions today. Coming up first, like we said, that sort of grudge mirror match leading off the tournament, UT Dallas taking on UT Dallas. Moving to the West region, NAU will be taking on Washington, and then it will be CSU Fresno versus Utah to round out the day. We will be live tomorrow as well with the East and North regions, Maryland versus TCNJ at the top, UMass taking on Sherbrooke, and then the end of the day will be Carleton versus Nipissing. So we are going to have a fantastic couple of days and a fantastic next 7 weeks casting for you guys. And if you want to get involved in the conversation, make sure you can go ahead and get on Twitter, tweet at Team Tespa, or go on Facebook /Team Tespa. Let us know who you're rooting for. Let us know what you think about this awesome tournament. So we are going to go ahead and get right into our first match very shortly. Let's go ahead and take a look at these 2 teams. It is, of course, the University of Texas Dallas grudge match. Kibler, what do you make of these class choices?
One thing that really stands out to me initially is that the, UT Dallas A team, or team number 1 on the left, they don't have a shaman. And Shaman is generally understood to be the strongest class in Hearthstone right now. There's a lot of different ways you can build Shaman to make it strong. And then the other Dallas team, it doesn't have Warrior, which is another of the sort of top-tier classes. So it'll be interesting to see how their self-bans line up given this this information.
Yeah, it's a little bit strange to see 2 of the top decks in the format, the top classes, being taken away, 1 from each of these teams. So let's take a closer look at University of Texas Dallas Team A. I guess we'll call it for now. It is going to be Heian, the Red Riot 14, and Keywork 523 with electrical engineering and computer science, mechanical engineering, and mechanical engineering, respectively.
I think we just call this the engineer team from UT Dallas here.
Pretty well.
And yeah, we can take a look at them on the screen there. Oh, I like their wall art, I have to say. So.
All right, I'm seeing too. It looks like you're going to be you're the 3rd teammate today, Brian.
Am I just like hanging out in the back there, giving them some tips?
You're good luck. Oh wait, no, there might be.
He made it back.
Our 3rd engineer. You sort of looking over them in this tournament, bringing them good luck, I suppose.
That is really funny to me. But anyway, moving on to the other UT Dallas team. Looking at their majors here, we'll call them Team Liberal Arts.
Yeah, I like that.
It is Wet Goose studying game design, Mystigo studying literary studies, and Ham Feet studying economics.
Yeah, this is certainly a very wide variety of majors. I myself was on the liberal arts track. I went to a liberal arts college, so I have to say I'm rooting for these guys. I'm hoping that they can do it. But it seems like the engineers have a bit of an edge. You know, they're more mathematically minded.
Well, I mean, my degree's in philosophy and religion, so I don't know. But I would say I would root for the liberal arts team. We see on the screen right there. But the other guys they've got that awesome wall art in the background. I don't know. It's tough for me to choose.
You may be a little bit biased, but then again, so am I.
Maybe a little bit.
So I can't really blame you.
You called me over to show me that right before the show. I was like, oh man, this is.
Oh, you knew? You didn't tell me?
I did.
Okay, well, it was a good surprise, so I suppose I'll forgive you.
I might have laughed too hard if it just popped up on the screen and I didn't know about it.
That's true. We didn't want to throw you off. All right, we can take a look at the bans here. UT Dallas has banned away their warrior. I believe that's the engineers. And then the liberal arts track has banned away their mage deck. So what are you making of these bans?
It's interesting. I'm a little bit curious what the specific archetypes are going to be for each of them. The warrior is assuming it's pirate warrior, which is the most popular version of warrior. That's very strong into a lot of the decks that the other UT Dallas team is bringing. So be a little surprising in terms of that self-ban. So maybe it's control. But we are actually getting into the game right here. We see the engineers on the top of the screen and the liberal arts team on the bottom. The engineers are playing mage. Looks to be a Reno mage deck. The Cabal Courier kind of gives it away, while UT Dallas playing their shaman. We didn't get a ton of information, I don't think, exactly about what type of shaman it was. I believe I saw Lava Burst.
Yeah, so
more aggressive, most likely.
Most likely Flame Wreath, Faceless, Tunnel Trog, Totem Golem. But the Jade package with Aya Blackpaw and Jade Lightning fits into pretty much every shaman deck nowadays.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. This is one of the reasons that Reno Mage is considered to be a strong deck in the metagame, is actually that it has a quite a strong matchup against the aggressive decks, against the pirate decks. Between your hero power, which can just kill patches, and the fact that you have a lot of cheap removal, like Frostbolt and Arcane Blast. You have lots of ways to deal with those early threats, but the Jade package from the Shaman can give you a lot of trouble in longer games. Speaking of game length, there's a Tunnel Trog, the one drop that used to be public enemy #1, but got supplanted by Small Time Buccaneer.
Yeah, I'm sure Tunnel Trog's happy about that. Some of the heat being directed away from him.
What happened to me being the superstar? Well, you could only go into one class, but UT Dallas, does have that shaman, which the other Dallas team chose not to bring. But the turn one here, there's a lot of a number of options here. Basically, pass or coin Frostbolt.
Yeah.
I was going to say a lot of options. There's not. There's
you know what? 2 options, sometimes one too many.
You could coin ping, but that's not really...
I don't know that I love it quite as much.
You're not going to break down the principles.
You commit to the 3-turn ping plan, and that might just be a little bit thinking too far into the future. But you're absolutely right. The Reno Mage has a lot of very efficient removal spells, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the card in its name, Reno Jackson. If you can't find it in a lot of cases, which sometimes, it's in the bottom 10 cards of your deck, there's nothing you can really do, then the Shaman can take advantage of that.
Yeah, you generally are needing to find Reno specifically because there's so much burn in the aggressive Shaman deck that even just removing all of their early minions, which we see Frostbolt helping do right here, really slowing down the damage that's coming from the Liberal Arts team. And now, just the 1/1 in play and this Jade Claws. They do have Flame Tongue totem, which they could use. Oh, and a pretty good draw there with the South Sea deckhand. So yeah, this is an interesting decision because you would be able to play the South Sea deckhand to get some damage right away. You'll bring out patches, I assume. There's patches in this deck.
I would hope. I mean, I don't know that I would hope, but for their sake, I would hope.
If you play the totem right now, your opponent just used Frostbolt, so they don't really have necessarily a great way to deal with the Flame Tongue totem. And South Sea deckhand with patches works really well with Flame Tongue. So I like this play from UT Dallas, just getting the most damage they can right now and setting up for a very powerful explosive damage turn with the deckhand plus patches next turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, it's more mana efficient next turn. They will have the option of Jade Lightning if UT Dallas engineers decide to play anything with 4 health, although on 3 mana it's not super likely. But this is definitely setting up more damage over the course of the next 2 turns. So I like this coming from the Liberal Arts guys.
Yeah, and the engineers did just pick up Reno Jackson, which, as we mentioned, very important in this matchup. They do choose to just ping off that Jade Golem, which will reduce the incoming damage right now. Though we see that UT Dallas Liberal Arts team, the worst draw in the deck. They find patches. And that is one of the risks of waiting and hoping to... We see a little bit of a laugh from the engineer team. drew your patches. I'm
Yeah.
surprised we didn't see an emote. That's, usually you see an oops emote when someone plays the patches from their hand.
I'm sure they're still warming up. Maybe they're just not quite. They're just not quite into the game yet. But you know what? UT Dallas Liberal Arts, they have the Azure Drake in hand, so they do have a little bit of stability over the next couple of turns.
Well,
But UT Dallas Engineers just. But the Engineers have Ice Block, they have Reno Jackson, they have a lot of tools still to be able to stabilize in this game. The only thing is if Reno Jackson and then Dallas Liberal Arts on the bottom, this is going to take some getting used to, has enough of a board presence, then they can simply, kill the Engineers even through the Reno Jackson.
The real key here will be for the Engineers to find themselves a way to deal with the board presence that they can actually get down prior to having to Reno. Ooh, interesting couple of options. Greater Healing Potion does give them significantly more healing that they can use post Reno Jackson, which can be very relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Generally, Reno Mage is fairly low, and that is a choice. And they're going to go ahead and choose to coin out their hero power to take down the South Sea Deckhand. So that removes 4 damage from the board. Because it is left of the Flame Tongue Totem, it does reduce the damage possibility. There's no more things that are on that side. We do see another Deckhand picked up by the Liberal Arts team. They did just use their weapon last turn, though, so they do not have the ability to charge with that Pirate.
Yeah, the Engineers trying to go for, next turn they have the option of Azure Drake or Ice Block and Hero Power if they're really feeling like the Liberal Arts track is going to essentially bring them down to 1 health in the following turn. But definitely trying to mitigate this board as much as possible, bring up their own board state, and then Reno Jackson. And from there, they're hoping to spiral out the game, because if they can take control of the board at that point, it's pretty much all over.
Yeah, once you've managed to Reno, if your opponent doesn't have a largely insurmountable board state, you're in a really good position.
Yeah.
And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to see them just go ahead and fireball this Azure Drake down. That barrier off of Babbling Brook, though, that's pretty good, because that is another card that can allow you to help delay the game. I could see the problem here is that even if they do just fireball here and take out the Azure Drake, they have to be pretty scared of burn, because the Liberal Arts team has a lot of stuff on the board, and yeah, they end up going ahead and playing the Ice Block here.
Yeah, if they were to kill the Azure Drake, that would open up the Liberal Arts team to double Lava Burst from hand being lethal. And even though it is unlikely, they're only about 10 cards into the deck, you don't want to take that chance, I suppose, when your hand is so, able to sustain the game for as long as it can.
Yeah, this play, though, does leave them in a position where they have not dealt with the board. They're essentially committed to Renoing this turn, and now they have no way to actually remove anything from the board this same turn. So they have to Reno, essentially. They're at 1 life, and there it is. Reno Jackson does bring them back up to 30, so they're going to be rich, but there's still so much damage on this board now for the Liberal Arts team.
Yeah, Dallas still having 10 damage on board, that Lava Burst representing quite a bit. Fortunately for the Engineers, the Liberal Arts guys do not have a weapon in hand at this moment in time, which is actually making their hand a little bit awkward.
And this is kind of interesting, because we go back a few turns to when they chose to attack with that weapon. And then immediately after attacking with their Jade Claws, which they didn't have a replacement for immediately, they drew South Sea Deckhand and then Small Time Buccaneer. So they drew a bunch of things that wanted them to have weapons just after using the last charge of their weapon. And it's interesting, did they need to use that weapon charge? Could they have maybe held off? But here, though, they still have a lot of damage. They have 10 just from the minions on their board. They could choose to trade off into Reno. They could just choose to Lava Burst Reno and send everything face.
If they decide to trade off into the Reno, then Flame Strike just absolutely destroys their board, pretty much taking them out of this game. So they're deciding to go ahead and hedge their bets, say that the Engineers do not have a way to clear this board. And unfortunately for the Liberal Arts guys, they just picked up a Blizzard.
Yeah, even if they didn't draw the Blizzard, they had the possibility of the Ice Barrier plus any number of healing effects to give them some more time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Blizzard here is pretty back-breaking, because it removes essentially all of the immediate threat, at least, from their board, and can allow, because they did not kill Reno, Reno can start working in on those few minions that actually survive the AoE.
Yeah, and I mean, you use Reno for the, obviously massive health gain, but a lot of the time that 4/6 body is very useful in cleaning up the board. You're playing it against pirates. It kills pretty much everything that they put down. In a pirate warrior, in shaman, it's able to take out a large chunk of the board unless it's larger jade minions. So it really does quite a bit of work as far as getting you back in the game.
It's kind of appropriate
aside from health.
Their cam is just Jaina now, and then casting mage spells. But
I mean, it's
casting the blizzard. You even heard, you know.
They're just letting Jaina take over.
Yeah.
Let her do her work. She's doing great.
Well, I think Jaina can take the game from this point. You got Reno. You've AoE your opponent's board. They're at 16, but there's not that much left in the liberal arts team's hand to really continue to push here, because there's an ice barrier, there's a greater healing potion, and even once you get past the healing, you know, there's fireball to remove the Azure Drake. There's any number of things to actually close this game out as well.
I mean, essentially, the engineers can heal for an additional 24 health from their hand right now. You know, there's 4 more with the Bran refreshment vendor if they even want to do that. So it's looking very unlikely for the liberal arts track. Very unfortunate that they have not drawn another weapon since they used that Jade Claws early on. In this matchup, you have to, I mean, they are an aggro shaman. They are an aggressive deck. You kind of need to just, you know, throw all your damage to the face at some point and hope that you're going to draw another weapon. But this time, they just unfortunately didn't.
Yeah, though we've kind of seen just the reason that Reno Mage is so strong in this matchup. And one of the reasons that Reno Mage has become so popular is the popularity of this aggro shaman deck. And you know, you have the tools to keep you alive. You have those removal effects, the early Frostbolt, the Blizzard. All these things have contributed. And we're going to see the reaction to the Greater Healing Potion. Kind of a shake of the head there. And I think there's a bit of a realization that this one may be getting out of reach. Spirit Claws is nice. It does enable these, but at the same time, your opponent's at 28. And that is going to be a lot of life to chew through. Especially, that hero power can kill that South Sea deckhand just immediately. And going to keep pushing in damage, but going to need to pick up perhaps another AoE to just really close the door on the chances here. We haven't seen Kazakus from the engineers. We haven't seen Flame Strikes. There's a lot of options in their deck still. Volcanic Potion could even, completely clear this board with the help of the Azure Drake. So the liberal arts track, not looking too good for them in this case. Flame Wreathed Faceless is something that could have kept them in this game. In the early game, the Flame Wreathed Faceless against the Mage is very difficult for them to deal with. Essentially, Polymorph is the only thing that can kill it outright on turn 4. So had they had that card, then they would have been in a much better position. But it didn't play out that way, unfortunately. How much life have the Engineer gained so far? They gained
29
from Reno, 12 from Greater Healing Potion, 8 from the refreshment vendor right here.
However much from the ice block.
Ice block did prevent some damage
Essentially
too.
prevent some damage.
And then they still have Ice Barrier in their hand.
Yeah, the Kabbalist Tome could give them, another block or another barrier.
It could. Well, the second ice block is not nearly as valuable, but yeah, an additional barrier can be absolutely devastating, just keeping you out of reach. Yeah, we see, back-to-back weapon draws for the liberal arts team, finding themselves a little inefficient use of their resources, just piling damage in.
That's a scary board for the Mage to have to deal with, and they don't have any of that board clear.
Arcane Blast is a very nice draw here. It does potentially allow the Engineer team to clear off anything they want alongside Azure Drake. They could also pair it with Archmage Antonidas to force the other Dallas team to trade into the Antonidas. That doesn't allow them to play Barrier, which I think has to be one thing that's foremost in their mind. Okay, how can we lose this game? They're in a very good position from a resource perspective, but really needs to kind of try and stem the bleeding as much as they can.
So Dallas has 15 damage represented here. Their board is full, meaning that they can't roll for the Wrath of Air Totem, so even Lava Burst off the top would not be lethal.
Wow, this is a pretty gutsy play here, I think.
It's very gutsy.
They're going to go ahead and not drop the barrier, just play the Antonidas. I mean, they could have just gone ahead and done that with Azure Drake and gotten barrier down as well. This does kind of put the other Dallas team into a rough spot because they don't really have the ability to they didn't have the ability to get lethal immediately, but now they're taking quite a bit of damage and not really able to finish things off. So the sort of push with the Antonidas does seem like it's paying off because there's no even attempt to remove it, and with that ice barrier in the hand, even Anizitic Swampus, it does look like the Engineers are going to be able to pretty much seal the deal.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, the Liberal Arts track has kept themselves in this game fairly well, but this Antonidas kind of just putting them in check. They can't expend any of their board into this Antonidas, otherwise they will just lose the game because they have absolutely no card draw. So choosing to ignore it, kind of they had to at this point.
Absolutely.
And if the Engineers did not have the ice barrier, then there was a chance that they could actually, over the course of the next couple of turns, draw for lethal. But
yeah, this is just kind of a formality at this point. There's not enough damage to remove Antonidas on the board, nor is there even real hope of drawing enough burn.
4 mana 7/7s are good.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if they drew exactly Burn Spell into Burn Spell, and they weren't dead, because they can do 13 points through the hand. Yeah, the attack to the face actually gains life for the Engineer team ultimately, because there's not going to be 8 total damage attacking most likely over the very short additional amount of time this game's going to play.
Yeah, but the chance that was any other secret.
I mean, it's not wrong for them to do it.
Effigy. Unfortunately, now with this, if they had drawn 2 Lava Bursts or Lava Burst plus Jade Lightning, I am not entirely certain which cards they've used already. I know there was some burn in there, but yeah, this is just about going to close it out for the Engineers. A very, very strong start with a really, really nice mage hand.
Oh wow, they're just clearing everything off here. Not gonna run the risk of anything happening. They just, I mean, when you play a deck like this, sometimes you're just like, I just want to kind of hang out here. And we see the Jade Lightning, my own face.
From 28.
All right, well, that is what's known in the business as Sudoku. And
honorable, of course. And they're still going to clear up these minions.
Oh, no, I think they're just setting the damage to the face.
Yeah.
And yeah, this does add up to enough damage. And Team UT Dallas Engineers picks up the first game.
Yeah, I mean, the Reno Mage is just incredibly strong right now. Personally, I prefer it over the Reno Warlock. In a lot of cases, it just feels like it has more stability in the late game. It feels like it has a lot more survivability against the aggressive decks. So it really, it makes a lot of sense to bring it in this tournament format. And you know what? You look really happy there, Brian. You look like you're proud of them.
I'm thrilled.
The black and white, very dapper. And these guys look just as happy, I'm sure, taking a quick first win in this match over their UT Dallas counterparts.
Yeah, and like we said, the Reno Mage, very, very strong deck, matches up particularly well against the Aggro Shaman, though I'm curious to see how the other Engineer decks do fare against that Aggro Shaman, because it is a very strong deck, and typically Warlock and Druid both struggle against it.
You kind of bring the Aggro Shaman assuming that it's going to get a win. It's sort of the reason you bring Shaman and Warrior, because Shaman and Warrior are so strong that at some point the Shaman's going to draw well, it's going to win. The Warrior's going to draw well, and you're going to win with it. So you kind of have to write off the Shaman as sometimes, you know what, they're going to win with it, let's just move on and figure it out. But getting a win with that Mage in the first case is a really big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily fare terribly well against at least Druid, which is remaining in the other lineup. So, well, we are going to go into the next game, and it will be the Warlock Mirror match. So this can be a long one.
Yes, it certainly can. And the Engineers with Faceless Manipulator in hand looking like they're running the combo Warlock variant. Leroy Jenkins, Faceless Manipulator, Power Overwhelming. Although in a lot of cases now, playing Lord Draxus and no combo is even more popular.
Yeah, they're on ladder at least.
Yeah.
The removal of the combo can often lead to slightly better win rates against the aggressive decks, which are extremely popular on ladder. In tournaments, most of the versions of Warlock you tend to see do tend to be the combo version, simply because there are fewer of the aggressive decks. You can only play against Shaman once.
Yeah. You hope.
Well, yeah. Well, you actually hope you play against it a bunch and you keep beating it. But you're not gonna play against Shaman every round like it seems like I do on ladder.
Yeah.
I actually just look at my stats from January, and I played against 250 Shaman.
Do you know how many
on ladder in January? I didn't actually count my total, but I played against 250 Shaman, 3 Hunters.
I did actually, you know what? I did actually lose to a Hunter in Legend
I'm
Ladder
1
yesterday.
and 2. I went 1 and 2 against Hunter. I have like a 60% win rate against Shaman, and I went 1 and 2 against Hunter.
I played Reno Mage and got destroyed by Savannah Highmane.
Wow.
I forgot how good of a card it was.
Wow, going with the Dirty Rat just on turn 2.
That's risky.
Yeah.
Not as risky as playing against Rogue, but in this case, not terribly bad.
Yeah, Dirty Rat is an interesting card in general, but in particular in this matchup because there are some minions you could just put into the play that would virtually end the game. If they had Dirty Ratted an Emperor Thaurissan, if they had Dirty Ratted even just the giant, the mountain giant that's in the hand right now, that could be disastrous. It's a very powerful card at breaking up combos, say forcing your opponent's Bran into play, forcing your opponent's Kazakus into play. Things that could be very high value cards, or, I mean, the Faceless Shambler that we do see in the hand.
Yeah, I mean, typically the Dirty Rat in control matchups is fantastic in the late game. Against aggro, it's very good early because most of the minions that your opponent will be playing are, you know, smaller, less high impact minions. But against control, you really want to save it until later in the game. Versus Reno, if you can pull Kazakus with that Dirty Rat, it's fantastic. If you can pull Reno or Leroy Jenkins, really just gives you so much of an edge, essentially taking a card out of your opponent's deck. And, you know, for Reno Warlock, you have cards like Twisting Nether, which can essentially allow you to play your Dirty Rat and immediately clear off whatever you pulled from your opponent. So playing it on turn 2, a little bit unusual, but fortunately for UT Dallas Liberal, the Corruption's going to be able to clear off that taunt minion right there.
One interesting thing just about the way that each of these teams is approaching this game too, the Liberal Arts team, they're just playing out their minions early. You know, they played the Misters and Mixers on 1, which is totally reasonable, totally understandable. You don't have anything else to do with your mana. But the Engineer team, they're getting their life taps in. And life tap is hugely valuable in these longer mirror matches because it does give you additional resources, and this is very much a resource fight. And so, you know, finding the specific powerful cards and being able to line them up against you know what your opponent has in their hand, whether it's your powerful answer against their powerful threat or vice versa. And if you can run them out, that's kind of how the game tends to end. And also, as we were mentioning earlier, assembling that specific combo, the Leroy plus Power Overwhelming plus Faceless and Emperor to reduce at least one of the parts.
Oh yeah. And a lot of the time in control matchups, you think, well, I need to draw as little as possible because this is a very long game and likely it will go to fatigue. And that's the case a lot of the time. But, you know, in a matchup like this, if you can draw so much that your opponent has nothing that they can do, you can win far before fatigue. So that looks like that's what the Engineers are going for. It looks like that's their game plan. And Liberal Arts Track finally getting a tap in, but their hand significantly weaker, a lot less utility.
They do get a Mortal Coil to clear off this. They find Kazakus.
Okay.
They already have Brand, so often even the Reno Warlock matchups, if the sort of early aggression is answered, and we see amusingly an off-curve Mountain Giant, usually you see the Mountain Giant come down on 4, but because of the Dirty Rat getting a card out of their hand, forced to come down on 5, there's basically that stage of the game where you know, you have the big things running into each other, and do you have an answer, do you not? And then there's the stage of the game of resource battles where the powerful things like Bran Kazakus can really run away with the game. But we see the Sylvanas, an excellent answer to the Mountain Giant, come down for the Liberal Arts team. Ooh, a powerful overwhelming, that's actually really strong. They can use their Faceless Manipulator on Sylvanas, kill the opposing 2/2, and then power overwhelm their own Sylvanas and steal the opposing Sylvanas if they want.
Wow, that is... They would have to break up their combo.
Right, it does remove a lot of their burst potential, but right now, Sylvanas is a huge threat. Right now, Sylvanas represents stealing your giant, and that's you know, an enormous, enormous problem that you don't have an answer to.
And how would the Liberal Arts Track actually clear off the Engineers board if it is an 8/6 Mountain Giant plus a Sylvanas Windrunner? I mean, at this point in the game on turn 6, that is incredibly difficult for them to deal with. And yeah, it looks like they see this line. It looks like that's what they're going to go with.
Yeah.
Incredibly impressive.
Yeah, they see the steal here. So, and we saw the coin used by the UT Dallas Liberal Arts team, which means they're a turn off again from Bran plus Kazakus. So they do find a Twilight Drake, but they are really far behind on this board. They don't have access to anything they can use with Shadow Flame to clear things off. They may just need to straight up Kazakus potentially, but yeah, I think they're looking at that. I think they realize they don't have time to sit back I think they're looking for polymorph here.
Yeah.
Because they're just, there's the 2 minions, maybe AoE. They don't really have anything combo with it.
They did get the poly.
Yeah, there is a poly if they choose to take it, yeah. Let's see exactly which first mode they took. I didn't actually get a chance to see that.
The 4 damage AoE would have been okay.
Would
have taken... Oh, wow.
As they
There's
find
another
Sylvanas.
Yeah, I mean, 13 power on board for the engineers, and no real way to clear off this board in one shot for the liberal arts, guys. This is looking... Like, it's looking to be a much faster Reno mirror than we thought. That's the second-rate bruiser pulled out for Dirty Rats this game.
Dirty Rats apparently do not get along well with the security at this club.
No.
I don't really. I'm kind of curious here.
Yeah.
What the game plan is here from the engineers. Looked like they were potentially looking to kill their own Sylvanas perhaps if it hit something big. With the Blast Crystal Potion, that was definitely a line of play that was available to them. You're going to go ahead and just tap back up, and just turn back over.
If Dallas had actually picked up the 4 damage AoE, they would have a way to clear off this board. If it was 4 damage AoE plus the Mystic Wool.
No, they do have the Power Roaming. Yeah, this is actually, I think, perhaps a misstep from the engineers a little bit. Leaving that Kazakhstan in play does leave open the possibility of Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame, and it's exactly the opportunity that the liberal arts team chooses to take. That said, the engineer team is still in a pretty good spot. The liberal arts team has expended their Kazakhs, which is one of the most important resources in this matchup. They do still have the potion, but they won't have the possibility of duplicating the battle cry with Bran, and they're still behind in life. And behind overall in sort of the tempo of the game, because it is the engineer team that's able to get the first minion on the board. But we do see, there it is. It was a polymorph plus 5/5.
Oh, that's really good.
So ends up working out pretty well here. See a little bit of a pained expression from the engineer team.
But at the same time, the engineers they've broken up their combo, right? So they don't have Power Overwhelming, they don't have Faceless Manipulator. We do see they're running Jiraxis, which in the late game can be very helpful, and they do still have Kazakhs. But if Dallas has a way to make it back on the board, it could look a little bit better for them. The engineers do have Twisting Nether in hand, so it's definitely an uphill battle for the liberal arts guys, but I can see a world where they can fight their way back into this.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, the fact that there is no threat of combo coming from the engineer team does mean that the liberal arts team can play very much differently. Particularly, you mentioned the Jiraxis that is in the engineer team's hand. That is often a scary card to play because of the threat of your opponent blowing you up with that combo. And if the liberal arts team finds their Jiraxis and they have a reasonably stable board, they can choose to play it, which is not necessarily the case for the engineer team because there is still the looming threat of combo from their opponents.
Well, actually, I believe the liberal arts team did use Power Overwhelming to Shadow Flame.
It's true.
And Leroy Faceless would still be...
is still 15 damage, or rather
still
12 damage.
Maybe Soulfire in the deck somewhere.
Right. There's still a lot more threat because of at least the existence of that Faceless as well.
All right, so the liberal arts team taken down to 15 health. No Reno in hand yet.
Yeah, this is a kind of scary spot. They're a bit low. As we mentioned, a lot of the burst potential is gone, or at least mitigated significantly. It looks like they're debating just playing the Emperor Tharson. If they did that, I assume they would Shadow Bolt off the Abyssal Enforcer.
This hand is not great for Emperor, though.
It's also just kind of clunky in general. They have a lot of situational cards, not that many cards overall. Obviously they have 7 cards in their hand, but if we look at the sort of context of the matchup, their opponent has 8. They do find Mountain Giant. All right, they're going to go ahead and clear this off. Refreshment Vendor, both teams up a little bit in health. But we're kind of seeing the ripple effects of the early turns of this game where the liberal arts team did not choose to use Life Tap, where they proactively developed on the board. And as a result, they're behind in resources, and it makes a card like Mountain Giant that they just drew, it makes it a lot worse. Because they have so many fewer cards, they can't actually play Mountain Giant plus Faceless as efficiently as they could otherwise.
Yeah, and that Twilight Drake sitting in the hand with
also
6
small,
cards, it's not a bad sized Drake. That's still a favorable amount of health. But if they were at 9 cards like their opponents, they'd be a lot more opportunities to actually put threats on this board.
Yeah, and this Doomsayer is also just really awkward for the Liberal Arts team. They don't have anything they can play into it that gives them any real development. Now, they could have obviously played Emperor and just reduced their hand, but oh, speaking of Emperor,
that's fantastic.
It's time for Emperor for the Engineers. They debating a little bit, maybe not.
It's not a bad Emperor. It means that you can Jiraxxus and Infernal on the same turn.
I think they may be debating if they want to life tap.
Okay.
Life tapping themselves from 16 to 14 does put them in range of just Leroy Power Overwhelming. I guess there's no Power Overwhelming yet, but it could be Leroy Faceless. Yeah, no 14.
14's pretty safe.
14. I don't think
Leroy Faceless Soulfire would be
because they've seen
mana.
the Dark Peddler as well, so there's no threat of an additional
yes,
Power
it got the
Overwhelming.
coil early
right?
on.
No, it got the Corruption.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
And so now I think that I think it's a safe life tap, especially if they are planning on playing Jiraxxus. Because they are planning on playing Jiraxxus there. Oh, actually, do they just have 9 cards? Am I just being foolish?
6, 9. Yes, they are at 9 cards.
Yeah.
So now they can tap if they want to.
If they wanted to tap, they have to play the Sun Fury. But interestingly,
But that's fine.
Yeah, they choose not to tap. They play the Sun Fury anyway, but do not life tap.
All right, but this Emperor is definitely a priority target, something that the Liberal Arts team needs to remove, but at this point they simply cannot.
Yeah. But they can play the Mountain Giant plus Faceless, which we mentioned earlier. But there is a Siphon Soul. There's a couple of options, actually.
Yeah.
There's a Shadow Flame. They have a way to... No, they don't have a way to get a big Shadow Flame here.
You can Blast Crystal and Siphon.
Yeah, they could just... Yeah, they could even tap Blast Crystal and Siphon. Just clear the entire board, get up to... Well, not in that order, because I think, again, they have... Well, no, they have 9.
They have 9 now. Every time I play Arena, I'm like, 3, 6, 9. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're safe.
I always find myself doing that with the Kazakus potions to get demons into my hand. I'm like, okay, I have to plan out
slots.
plan out several turns worth, because it's like, okay, I'll just like throw out a card in the middle again. People are like, why do you play that? I'm like, because 2 turns from now
I'm gonna need free demons.
Potion. Yeah, and it will be just removal. Both your 8/8s are dead, and it's gonna push for more damage too. This does have the Liberal Arts team down to precarious 6 life. They do have Reno Jackson.
Yes.
So they're not in desperate straits, but they also can't play Reno and remove this Emperor who's already gotten 2 ticks off.
I mean, at this point, there's never a really point where you want to say, well, you know what, screw the Emperor. He's already discounted so much. I don't need to kill it. You always want to kill it, but now it's so far gone that it just feels a little bit hopeless. The Twilight Drake plus the Reno, I think, is nice. It's developing on board as much as you possibly can at this point. Maybe you get to remove the Emperor next turn.
Yeah, and there is no possibility like finding kind of crazy lethal here. There's no. They only have 7 units. What up in life? They do have they have the Peddler. They could Peddler, try and find Power Overwhelming. I mean, I could see potentially Peddler into Power Overwhelming. Maybe you just want to Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame, perhaps on your Sun Fury, because you want to get rid of this board.
Yeah.
Because you'd love to have a relatively stable board and be able to play Jiraxxus.
Also,
you kind of want to protect your Emperor as well. If you can continue to do so, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, you could leave it at 1 health if you were to get the Power Overwhelming from the Peddler and then go with that Shadow Flame play. The Engineers have a lot of options here, and the Acidic Swamp Ooze pickup is actually really nice as well. Seeing the Jiraxxus in the Liberal Arts team's hand, but they're just going to go ahead and get their Jiraxxus down with a Taunt on board. They feel relatively safe. Knowing that the Liberal Arts team has used their Power Overwhelming as well, so the full combo is not available to them. They haven't Emperored either, so at this point, I think this is a pretty good pick.
I'd like to point out that they played Jiraxxus, Shadow Bolt, and Hero Powered
on the same turn.
That was a big turn. But
also like to point out we're losing Emperor Thaurissan soon, so turns like this will only be popular for so much longer.
Well, wild, you can always do it there.
Wild gets even more wild.
But yeah.
Wow.
All right, well, interesting. So I'm not sure I like this, because clearly the idea of this Defender of Argus is to protect your Emperor Thaurissan. The problem being you're giving your opponent like a pretty great value trade into the Twilight Drake anyway, and
I don't know how much the hand of the Liberal Arts team is worth to simply not take the 1/1 buff and the taunt on the Emperor.
I mean, looking at the hands, we can see here there's a Shadow Flame, and there's a very good chance that the Engineer team will just choose to clear this with Shadow Flame, given the threat of the Emperor remaining up. They can even just attack the minion in the Infernal, and just Shadow Flame the damaged one. Ooh, yeah, never mind. They're making a new one. Obviously, do that.
The attack with this one is 6 damage is pretty good. And the Liberal Arts team does not have Twisting Nether in hand. They are kind of struggling for a way to clear this board. Siphon Soul on the Infernal can remove it, but then that's the power of Jiraxis. You got a new one every single turn.
Yeah, Jiraxis is really the absolute king of the late game. Unless you can explode him in a single turn, which at 15 health is entirely entirely reasonable, and goes back to what we were talking about very early on about the threat of combo. Because neither team is really under threat of combo, Jiraxis is just dominant. Jiraxis is just going to really, really define this late stage of the game. And yeah, now this is just kind of desperation plays from the Liberal Arts team. They play a Doomsayer that dies on board.
Yeah.
And they're not in a situation where they can make any better plays.
I mean, they really don't have any threats left. They've played Twilight Drake, Mountain Giant, their Kazakus is gone, as well as the potion. The Engineers still have Kazakus in deck. So even just
to say nothing of
and a 10-mana potion,
in play.
just, the 6/6 Infernals every single turn. It's not looking good for the Liberal Arts team. Maybe the power of the Kibler poster is working, unfortunately for me and my liberal arts background. But yeah, it looks like the Engineers are going to take this one pretty easily. I was
going to say, I'm torn.
No, you got your religious background,
I got my philosophy and religion degree, and then they have my playmat on the wall.
So what are you more?
How can I choose my rooting interests? Got to show.
Where do your loyalties lie, Brian? Is it with your merchandise, or is it with your educational background?
Next we have
maybe they've got the Kibler playmat on their computer too. Well, then it's an easy choice.
It's just their wallpaper. You just can't see.
Yeah, the nice picture of Shiro in the back.
Ooh, there you go. Oh, and there's Leroy. Yeah, they have Leroy faceless, but the Engineer team has been carefully not attacking into anything with their face to take any damage, leaving themselves very much not vulnerable to any kind of burst. But if it weren't for the fact that they have 9, 14, yeah, they actually have exactly lethal on board. So the Liberal Arts team could play Jiraxis Punch the Face. Even if they got healed up, they would be able to play the Leroy Faceless Punch Your Face again if there were no tools. Yeah, and this is just
going to be it with the Hellfire in hand.
Yep, and we see Jiraxis comes down, punches down. No, just gonna go face. They are gonna try to give themselves
set up lethal for next turn.
And this is an attempt to find a way to actually win the game. They're not gonna find it because there is the lethal Hellfire just waiting in the hand. But their goal here was to set up for that Leroy Faceless lethal. And yeah, we see the Engineer team celebrating their second win. They just need to win one more game, I believe, with their Druid deck, if I recall correctly.
I believe.
With their lineup. And yeah, they're definitely excited. Tagging in the next player.
I like that. I like actually giving each guy a chance to pilot a deck. It's really cool. It's showing a lot of different aspects of the team play. And I think a lot of that game came down to exactly what you were talking about, which was the Engineers just were able to tap more in the early game. They had more threats, more utility going into the later game, and the Liberal Arts team seemed like they were spending the entire game trying to play catch-up.
Yeah, and I think some of that did have to do with just the decision-making early on. We saw the early Dirty Rat come down, and it didn't really have a significant impact. It pulled out actually a pretty big minion that they had to then deal with, and it kind of forced them to use their resources somewhat awkwardly in the early turns. It meant that they didn't build up that big hand to get a cheap Mountain Giant early, and they also just didn't find the cards they needed until later in the game. So I think that sort of the understanding of the matchup overall seemed to be in the favor of the Engineer team.
Yeah, and combo plus Jiraxis, giving the Engineering team a 2-0 lead in this match. They need to find a win with their Jade Druid to close out the series. And against the Pirate Shaman build, it could be a little bit tough. The Jade Druid is a very slow deck. Against control decks, it is incredibly powerful. It can outlast pretty much anything and is actually immune to fatigue if played correctly with the Jade Idols. But versus Pirates and Shamans, it can be a bit tough to live that long.
This is not going to be a fatigue game. This is going to be a smork game. We see
Dead by turn 7 game.
Yeah, we see the Pirates already coming out, and there's a 1/1, which does challenge one of these minions on the board, but yeah, Flame Tongue Totem is going to be 7 damage coming down here on turn 2. So already down to 22 life on the UT Dallas side, and we're seeing kind of a clinic here on why this this aggro Shaman deck is considered so strong.
Yeah.
But this is a very good draw from the Engineers for their Jade Druid. They have the turn 1 Jade Idol into turn 2 Jade Blossom thanks to the coin. And now this is kind of an awkward spot. Ooh, the Liberal Arts team kind of quickly played that Sir Finley. And
I think it was worth thinking about a little bit.
Well, they had the possibility of, say, potentially playing the Totem Golem and Lightning Bolt to protect their board. And now this is actually a pretty huge swing.
This is a really big swipe.
Yeah, the swipe taking this out and taking out the totem if they so choose here. So this all of a sudden went from okay, well this is like a huge board to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, now Dallas is going to have more resources in the long run. The Engineers, I mean, the Liberal Arts team did pick up Life Tap off of the Finley, which was a really big deal. It gives them more staying power, which they're going to desperately need because their hand is only burn. But if the Engineers can get this Jade Behemoth up and running, and we saw Ancient of War in the Mulligan, they do have a lot of ways to live. Feral Rage can extend this game even longer, maybe even put them completely out of range of the Shaman.
Yeah, and those are going to be some of the key cards we're gonna be expecting to see. But yeah, because this minion is just still on the board, there's a lot of defense for the Engineer team. They could just go ahead and take the free trade on Sir Finley. They can use the hero power and take down the Tunnel Trog without even losing their Jade Golem here as well. They have the option to potentially Wild Growth, Jade Idol, and use their hero power. And this is a matchup where you mentioned that Jade Idol gives invulnerability to fatigue in long games. This isn't going to be a long game.
This is not going to be one of those games.
This is not a game where you ever reshuffle with Jade Idol. And just playing a 1-cost 3/3 here, it seems like it has the potential to be very strong. It also makes your Jade Behemoth next turn stronger.
Even Bran on this board wouldn't be terrible. I don't think you're in a position where you have to, but what are the odds that in the later game you're really going to need Bran to make bigger Jades? It's just a thought. But I think the Jade Idol, the hero power, and the Wild Growth ramping you even further. Now they can use the Nourish for Draw going on, which will be a lot more valuable because their hand size is getting a little bit low.
Well, the hand size for Dallas is not that big, but it's full of burn.
That's a lot of damage.
They have Blood Mage Thalnos, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, Jade Lightning. That's 12 burn, not counting any kind of spell power. They could play...
you're not playing a board game here. There's no way you're going to win in a battle for the board against the Jade Druid. And their hand is speaking burn. They likely have another Jade Lightning and Lava Burst in deck.
But the Feral Rage picked up by the Engineers is huge. They're just basically saying, okay, you can't kill us next turn. And the Liberal Arts team is thinking, okay, we can draw Lava Burst. Actually, they're still short. They're 1 mana short.
Yeah.
So, and we've just seen how much work this Jade Golem has managed to do that the Liberal Arts team allowed to live early on. And I think that this game may have been a pretty significant bit different if they had chosen a Lightning Bolt potentially. But yeah, we see, we got Blood Mage plus Bolt, maybe Tap.
I think you want to fit in the Life Tap as much as possible.
I think, you 100% have to find additional burn.
Yes.
So I would suspect that we'd see a Life Tap here to try and dig a little bit further to find that. Let's go ahead and Blood Mage. Oh, and just gonna get the extra damage guaranteed.
Well,
this makes a lot of sense too, because yes, they may not Life Tap immediately, but yeah, we see the Engineers. They know that they have that Feral Rage to gain 8 armor. That's just gonna put the game pretty much out of reach.
With the ability to shapeshift every turn for 1 additional armor.
And they have a big board too. It's not like the Liberal Arts team has infinite time. They can't just sit back and Life Tap. They're taking huge hits each turn. This is 7 this turn.
I mean, imagine if that Flame Tongue had still been on board in the early game. If they had chosen to Lightning Bolt the Jade, and their Flame Tongue would have lived through the swipe, this could have been a very different game. But now, the Engineers at 11 health, the Liberal Arts team absolutely no damage in hand. And what are the odds they actually get through this taunt? I don't think the engineers will let them.
Oh, and another Pharaoh Rage. Is that even just lethal damage? They have
4, 8.
They have 11, 14.
18.
Yeah, they actually just have lethal with that Pharaoh Rage. I wouldn't blame them if they just gained armor, though, just to rub it in. But
ooh, I mean, they're already up 2-0. Although, you know what? It is another team from your school. If you want to prove dominance, you want to show that you're the best.
Assert dominance. Oh, no, they're just going to bite them. And, yep, we see all that damage does go to the face. And in a dominating performance.
That was not what you expect to see in Jade Shaman versus Jade Druid. But you know what? Really, really well played by the engineers, actually. Very impressive.
Yeah, they navigated those games very well. I think that they seem to have, as we mentioned before, a bit of a better understanding of what mattered in the Warlock matchup. And there, that was a tough matchup. They had a very good draw.
Yes.
But I think they maneuvered what their resources available to them very well.
Absolutely, and a 3-0 victory over their fellow team from UT Dallas. Really, really impressive stuff coming out of our so-dubbed engineers. Some might say that maybe it was the power of the Kibler poster watching over them. So I guess you made the right pick this time, but I still have faith in the liberal arts track. I think they can take it. And of course, it is 7 weeks of Swiss, so a 5-2 record or better will net them a spot in the next phase of this tournament series. So the liberal arts team is not out of it yet. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from that match.
And this was, obviously the game-winning attacks there. Not too much to say about that, but yeah, they're clearly pretty excited.
Nice three-way high five there.
And this, as we mentioned, one of the sort of defining characteristics of that matchup. They don't feel too bad about getting a 3-4-5.
This was a really nice play, actually. You spotted this, and I'm actually very surprised that they did as well. It's showing that they're very high-caliber players.
You hear the reactions there, and that was that mirror match. Definitely some excitement from them. Can hear a little bit of them talking in the background. I don't know, but
getting some form of insight, I suppose, in the form of some. Oh, let's hear that shouting.
Yeah,
yep, see that's excitement. That's a happy team. So they are going to take a quick 3-0 victory, going up 1-0, and we should have an interview with our winning team very shortly. But until then, I just really want to get your thoughts. Those lineups were really interesting. Do you think that maybe if, the liberal arts track had chosen to play a warrior, maybe it could have panned out differently? They had the shaman, whereas the engineers had the warrior. And, clearly for the engineers, not taking shaman ended up working out. So do you think that maybe it was something with the lineup, or was it just how it panned out?
I mean, frankly, I think that the first game, the first matchup really favored the engineer team. They were able to get what I think was the only bad matchup for the Shaman deck in their lineup. I think the Shaman deck was likely favored against both the Druid deck and the Warlock deck. Granted, we saw the Druid deck beat it, but the Reno Mage matches up very, very well against the aggressive Shaman, and that gave them a pretty easy 1-0 lead in the series. And then again the sort of mirror match, which, as we mentioned, I feel like the engineer team just navigated a little bit better. And then finally, it was just a great draw, I think, from the Jade Druid in the last game. I don't know what really we actually didn't see the third deck, the Druid deck from
We did not.
The liberal arts team, and also I believe they banned their own. I'm trying to remember what their other deck was. It was a mage. They banned their own mage.
Yes.
Yeah, they had a mage too.
Yes.
Which is a little bit unusual to me. I guess if they're going up against the potentially against a druid, that's a tough matchup there. But I think the mage is generally even or favored against the warlock, and obviously is at least fairly even against the opposing mage. Assuming it's Reno Mage, we don't know. But I'm just sort of, I haven't actually thought too much about self-ban strategy.
The self-ban format is really strange. It's bringing sort of a foreign element into this.
Little bit different thought process.
But you know what? Let's go ahead and actually we can ask the winning team their thoughts on this match. So we have a short interview. Guys, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. You're good.
Well, congratulations, first of all. A 3-0 victory, especially over a team from your own school, must feel pretty good.
Thank you very much. It doesn't feel bad.
So do you guys know the team that you played against? Have you met those players before?
No.
Yeah?
All right.
Are you going to run around the school just bragging that you beat your own team?
We definitely got bragging rights now.
But yeah, I mean, that was a really dominant game from you guys, 3-0, and especially your Arena Warlock play was really fantastic. Do you have a lot of experience on that deck?
Yeah, that's been the deck that I've been laddering with mostly. So I played it over the last 4 or 5 days, and I've gone all the way up to 6. So I've been playing Reno Lock for quite a while, and it's one of my favorite decks.
And how did the self-ban element of the format change the sort of strategy that you came in with, both in terms of your deck selection and what you ended up playing and banning in your match?
We mostly just looked at what decks we had available were better against the possible decks that they would bring, and we just felt that Warrior wouldn't do very well against either of the Reno decks, which we thought they would bring both of. So we felt that was an easy ban.
It was a pretty big surprise when they banned their own mage.
Yeah, that one made it weird for game 1 picks. Mainly just because we took out the Warrior because we wanted to commit to a more mid-range to controlling types. But when they took out the mage, we were like, oh crap! Like, all right, it's fine.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked out well for you guys. And just one last question: your handsome wall art, has that been there the whole time, or did you just recently purchase that and put that up? Because I know Kibler was definitely enjoying it.
It's actually a playmat that one of our other friends had. And
Oh, I know.
Oh, he's aware.
For all the games, we're all good. This is my brother. We're brothers, and then this is just a friend. But we play Magic all the time, and we picked that up at a
long time ago.
And like we've been playing Eternal. We play Ascension at home.
Kibler, I think they're fans.
Well, you have excellent taste in games and playmats. So.
All right, congratulations, guys. Best of luck in the next 6 weeks of play, and really just fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, I would definitely say that you've got a favorite team going into the next 6 weeks of play, Kibler.
I mean, I'm definitely rooting for them.
They seem like fun guys. We got brothers. That's really cool. I'm always
some other guy.
Some other guy, some friend. But he seemed nice from the 20-second interview we had with him where he said very few words. But yeah, congratulations to UT Dallas, the Engineers beating out the Liberal Arts team 3-0. Very easy. So let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule for the rest of the day. As you can see there, UT Dallas picking up an easy win. Moving on, next we're going to be venturing to the West region. It will be NAU taking on the University of Washington, which actually has a familiar face on the team, so that's going to be really fun. And then after that will be CSU Fresno taking on Utah. So don't go anywhere, guys. The day is not finishing up anytime soon. We've got 2 more fantastic matches, and we will be right back after this.